Hello, and welcome back to the Fallen Tree. So, walking through the orchard, I've been planting a few apple trees every year. And this year, they're starting to take off. Finally. So what better to do with apples than make apple cider? But the only problem is, I don't have a fruit press. So, we're going to solve that problem. With the help of the sawmill to cut some wood, some power tools, and some hand tools, I plan on making a budget-friendly fruit press that's going to last for years to come. So let me walk you through my journey of how I built my family's fruit press this year. It all started back at the sawmill, where I milled up the lumber, the dimensions that I needed to build it. I had to carefully build in my head. Needed to make some 4x4s, some 4x12s. And then the next step was to square up these ends and then lay out where every cut was going to be. I planned on doing this with mortises and tongues to hold everything together strongly. So in the planning stages, the first step was to determine the height of the first shelf. Knowing that the biggest bucket I would probably use was a 5-gallon bucket, I went and found one and measured it. Left myself a couple inches taller. I believe I made the first shelf at 16 inches. Then I had to think about the basket I was going to use, plus the jack and the blocks that it was going to take to press this. And then, after that layout, it was off to work. Started drilling in my mortises, using a drill and a 2-inch Forstner bit. This seemed to be the most logical way of doing it in my head. I wasn't going to make square tendons. I was just going to round them off at the top and bottom and make them fit snugly. So I drilled them down and then used my circular saw to make plunge cuts to give nice square sides, followed by the drill again with the Forstner bit, lined up on each side, drilling straight down, which I would eventually clean up with the chisel. Though, it turned out very clean with mostly just the Forstner bit, and cleaning up the inside edges just a little bit. Next was to make the tendon. For that, I was going to use a circular saw, cut it out the shape that I wanted it, the 2 inches wide, and then slightly bevel the tops to make them fit into the round holes. As we all know, you can't stick a square peg in a round hole. So I then set my saw to depth, cutting each side and chiseling away carefully with the chisel. I did this with all the pieces. Then I took my power planer and cleaned up the bottom and chamfered the edges. I wanted to make a little bit of a reveal in the bottom, so when I set it down on a slab or the ground, it was sitting up with just the edges at each end touching. As I put them together, I used 4-inch construction lags to hold them in place, along with the mortise and tendon. And there, the first leg was done. And as you can see, it fit like a glove. Very tight and secure. The dimensions I used between the two posts was 24 inches. The pan I was going to be using to catch the cider from my basket was approximately that wide. And as you can see here, I had to use ratchet straps to pull it tightly together, being the snug fit that it was. And then just holding it together with the screws. Next step was the basket. For that I was using true 2x material. And though I'm using a lathe because it's available to me, you could use a saw of any type to cut these round circles. I was looking to make mine around 12 and a half inches round. And I turned two, one for the top, one for the bottom. So the next step, I used some 1/2 inch stainless steel screws. I made these little laths about 3/4 inch by 2 inches, along with some hurricane strapping. At first I placed the slats an 1/8 inch apart, and when I got it together, I realized it didn't bend to the diameter I wanted. So I then had to take it and put them 1/2 inch apart, and that seemed to work out well. So I lined them all up on my table here, 1/2 inch apart, and then used the screws to start screwing the strapping evenly across the top and the bottom. Once I got the slats almost all the way complete, I started screwing them in a couple places to the bottom to clamp them in place, and then place the remaining slats in and screwed those in place. And this is what it looked like. The bottom screwed in place down at the bottom, and the top piece is approximately 1/2 inch smaller, so it will slide in and down and be able to be pulled out easily. I threw a coat of stain on the frame itself and putting a piece of 3/4 inch board on top for my catch pan to sit on. Now this can be any sort of pan. You could get a cookie sheet from your cupboard. For this, I'm using a hot water tank pan. It's aluminum, will clean up easy, is easy to work with, and I'm just cutting a little spout down at the bottom so the cider will run off and into my bucket. So this is what the finished product kind of looks like here. I got my basket that my press plate is going to fit down into. I cut 2 separate blocks. So depending on how much mash or how much fruit I have in this, I'll be able to use one until the jack gets to a certain point and then use the other. So to actually press the fruit then, I've got a bottle jack. A bottle jack I had laying around in the garage. You could use an old car jack, bottle jack, I don't think it really matters. Just something that will press down on your fruit and slowly drain the juices. And in my next video, I'm going to show you how I built my apple grinder to make the mash to go down in the fruit press. So, if you like this video, click like, subscribe, share with your friends. Can't wait to see you on the next part of my adventure on the journeys here at the Fallen Tree 124. Until next time, my friends.